All right. We'll start our Socratic seminar over Brave New World chapters 1 through 12 as more of you come in. Okay, so I put some instructions in the group chat. If you want to contribute, go ahead and type next, and I'll say your name and then add what you have to say to the chat, and then we'll kind of go around the room. This is bonus points only, so added to quiz grades. You can get 5 points for a comment, 5 more points if you have text evidence, 5 points for adding on to what someone else said. And we'll start with round 1 whenever you guys are ready. So the questions were up in Google Classroom early this morning. And as soon as you guys are ready to go, you can start making contributions, and then we will, we'll kind of roll. You guys will kind of drive how fast and furious and how long this lasts.
Your article just came out today. Oh, sorry.
All right, Rosa, you're up. Okay, so we're waiting for Rosa's first comment. I see that a few more of you have come in. Go ahead and introduce yourselves in the group text so we know who all's here. Here's how this is supposed to go. If you have a comment, go ahead and type next, and I'll call on you, and you can go and contribute. Any of the questions in round one, we can talk about. Hello, Julian. How are you doing today? Hanging in there, staying sane, waiting for opening day. Okay, so let's see here. So the question about happiness was, what is happiness? According to the people who live in the world state, do you agree with their definition? Okay, so Rosa says, the question about happiness, I think that people in Brave New World think that just working, doing the same routine every day is happiness. And I don't agree, because you get tired of things, you need to experience new stuff to find what makes you happy. All right. Thank you. Someone else? Does anybody have something to add on to what Rosa said? Or does anybody want to move on to a different question? Oh, yes, Julian, go ahead. And the rest of you, if you have comments, you might want to go ahead and just start typing them in. I think instead of waiting for next, go ahead and type in comments that you have. That way, move a little bit faster. So Julian says, I understand where Rosa is coming from, but you have to understand that they were conditioned to like these things from a young age. Okay. I would agree with that. Of course, then the question I would ask is, Lenina isn't super happy. She kind of feels something missing. And the same with Bernard and with Helmholtz. I mean, and if we're going to talk about Mustafa Mann, the world controller, I don't know that you could argue that he's particularly happy either. But conditioning certainly plays a powerful force for them. All right. How about some of the rest of you? Mariah, Victoria, what do you have? Okay, so Rosa says, can I add, if you think about it, they were programmed and it's not actually who they are, if that makes sense. Now that raises an interesting question that, is there part of the personality, part of the individual person that's different from the conditioning that you receive? Or does conditioning produce your identity? That is an excellent question. So is somebody like if somebody grows up and they become a serial killer, is it a product of their conditioning or just who they were beforehand? Interesting question. And then Raya says, I agree with Julian because this is all they've known, but as for the others, they're coming to realize this isn't the life they want. Okay. Well, for Lenina and Bernard, I think that their dissatisfaction began before they went to the Savage Reservation. So it's kind of all they've known too. So I think you'd want to look at how does conditioning differ? Well, alphas don't receive emotional conditioning. So, when Bernard was young, he wasn't in one of those rooms listening to recordings overnight. Yes, Bernard isn't as happy with himself either. He seems to feel like an outcast, and he gets made fun of. People are like, "Oh, they must have spilled alcohol in your test tube," because of the way he looks. And then Lenina, obviously, her lifestyle isn't bringing her the happiness that she thinks that it should. Okay. All right. Lots of good stuff so far. What else do you have? Some of the other questions. In round one, how are people treated like commodities? In other words, objects to be used for financial purposes. What is the attitude of the world state government, in other words, the government where Bernard lives, with respect to creativity? Like, how creative are people encouraged to be? What is the purpose of hypnopedia? That's where they're lying in bed at night listening to those emotional or to those recordings, the sayings over and over again. So what is that, and what is something that we have in our society that serves the same purpose or function? And then it talks about utilitarianism, and that's a philosophy where things are good when they create the most happiness for the most people. And one question, if you take a philosophy class that you'll run into, you're a train conductor and you see that your train is about to hit 3 people and kill them. You can pull a switch and change onto another track, but you'll kill 1 person. So do you pull the switch or not? And the utilitarian would go ahead and pull the switch because it's obviously you're going to create more happiness if you only kill 1 person as opposed to killing 3 people. But then other people are saying, well, why not derail the train? Well, then you'd have a lot of people that were unhappy. So what do you think the train conductor should do? Why or why not? And then the question that Rosa answered. Those are the round 1 questions. Do we have any more comments on those? Got points so far for Rosa, Julian, Mariah, and Victoria. And each point, 5 points, goes on to your lowest quiz grade. Okay. Last call for round 1. Okay. Julian says, I feel hypnopedia is similar to when in politics or news repeats the same facts or opinions. You would start to believe what they're saying eventually over time. Okay. Let me see. Man, I'm looking something up that makes me think of. Okay. In 1977, there was a study about the illusory truth effect. In other words, how often do you have to hear something to believe that it's true? And in the study, students were given multiple choice questionnaires to judge their knowledge of some of the statements on the list. So they got 2 lists of statements, and they were asked which ones are true. And the more items appeared on the list, even if they were false, and the respondents knew that they were false, they would think that it's true. One example was, like, if you've ever seen a Scottish person walking around in a skirt, a Scotsman, a man from Scotland, those are called kilts, not skirts. They're called kilts. But they had a list in their study that said a sari, S-A-R-I, is the name of the short plaid skirt worn by Scots. And the more people read it, even though they knew that it wasn't true, they tended to believe it was true. So that's interesting. Okay, and then Rosa says, I agree with Julian because we're getting brainwashed by social media or any platform we use. For example, the coronavirus, there's a lot of misinformation, and over time we start to believe it. Well, okay. And we've talked about this in class. Like if you're on Facebook or Instagram, you see things on the basis of what you've liked in the past. It pushes you in that direction. And so you'll start seeing more posts that are like or from groups that you've already liked. So I don't know if that's going as far as brainwashing, but it's certainly isolating you from people who have different opinions. Okay, anything else from round 1? Okay, go ahead and take a look at the list for round 2. If you already have notes for round 2, that's even better, and you can go ahead and start. The questions are, the Bokanovsky process takes one embryo and turns it into dozens of people with reduced mental capacity to provide a stable pool of workers. Does our society have something similar? If so, what is it? And why do you think it's similar? If you could reverse the Bokanovsky process by elevating the abilities of people by altering their embryos, do you think that would be ethical? Why or why not? Constant consumption, purchasing and using objects and experiences is an important part of the world state. This book was published in 1930. Based on what was happening in history at that time, why do you think this is such a prominent novel or theme in the novel? One goal of the world state is the elimination or at least the minimization of emotions. Why do you think that is a realistic goal for a society? Why or why not? And then finally, totalitarianism or total control of people through the use of technology is one theme of this novel. This is a common theme in many dystopian novels. What is one form of modern technology that you would give up if you thought it would increase your personal freedom? So those are the 5 questions in round 2. Oh, Victoria, I didn't see your message before you retracted it. Okay, so if you have more comments about round 1 or you want to go into round 2, now would be a good time for that.